She didn't just leave without saying goodbye. She left without looking back. No call, no text, no note on the pillow. Just gone. I woke up in that hotel room and the bed next to me was empty, cold, like she'd never been there at all. For a second I thought I was dreaming. I splashed water on my face, looked around. Her suitcase was gone, her shoes were gone, everything was gone. Except me. And on the nightstand there was something she left behind, something she didn't mean to leave. I'll show you exactly what it was in a moment, and trust me, you're going to want to see this. Because this isn't just a story about a man waking up alone in a hotel room. This is a story about secrets, about a marriage built on lies, about the one moment of carelessness that unravels everything. Here are the 3 things that will shock you most. First, the item she left behind didn't just answer one question, it answered questions I didn't even know to ask. Second, what I found led me somewhere I never expected to go, and what was waiting there changed everything. Third, by the end of this story, you'll understand why she forgot me, and I promise you the reason is nothing like what you're thinking right now. This story has layers, and every single layer is darker than the last. Let me show you exactly how this happened. Let me take you back to the beginning. Because this didn't start in that hotel room, it started months earlier, quietly, the way most betrayals do. My name is Daniel. I was 34 years old when this happened. I'd been married to my wife Claire for 6 years. We had an apartment in the city, a dog named Biscuit, and what I thought was a solid marriage. Were we perfect? No. But I thought we were honest. I thought we trusted each other. Looking back now, I missed so many signs. Here's the first mini surprise. Claire had been pulling away for almost a year before this moment. Subtle things. She'd stay up late on her phone, she'd laugh at messages and tilt the screen away. She started taking solo trips to visit her sister. I believed her every single time. Why? Because I loved her, and love makes you blind to things your gut already knows. The trip that changed everything was supposed to be a reconnection weekend, her idea. She planned it, a hotel about 3 hours from home, nice place, 4 stars. She said we needed time away from the routine. Time to remember why we chose each other. I was actually hopeful. I packed my bag the night before with a smile on my face. We drove up on a Friday evening, had dinner, had a couple of drinks. It felt like old times, laughing, talking, holding hands across the table. I went to bed that night thinking, maybe things are getting better. I should have paid more attention to one thing. When we checked in, Claire asked the front desk a question, just one question. I barely noticed it at the time, but later, much later, that question would tell me everything. She asked, "Is there a side exit near the east parking lot?" I thought nothing of it. Checking the layout, being prepared, that's Claire, always organized. But the truth, she was planning her exit before we even unpacked our bags. Now here's where things get really interesting. I woke up at 7:14 a.m. I know the exact time because I still have that day burned into my memory like a photograph. The curtains were half open, gray morning light, the other side of the bed empty, sheets barely crumpled like she'd barely slept. I called out her name, nothing. I checked the bathroom, empty. I checked the closet, her bag was gone, her coat was gone, her toiletries gone. My first thought was something happened, maybe a family emergency, maybe she stepped out and forgot her phone. I reached for my phone to call her. And that's when I saw it. On the nightstand, right next to my charging cable. The keycard. Not the hotel keycard, we each had one of those. This was different. It was older. A white plastic card with no hotel branding, just a small black magnetic strip and a handwritten room number on a tiny sticker. Room 214. The number meant nothing to me at first. But here's the first wow moment, we were staying in room 318. Room 214 wasn't even on our floor. I sat up straight, heart beating fast. I turned the card over in my hand, no name, no logo, just that number. Had she dropped it by mistake? Had she picked it up somewhere? I'll be honest, I tried to talk myself down. There are 100 innocent explanations, I told myself. Maybe someone in the hallway dropped it. Maybe she found it and meant to hand it to the front desk. But something in my chest wouldn't let it go. And here's what's important. I almost put the card down and called her. Almost. Instead, I got dressed. I took the elevator to the second floor. I walked slowly down the hall. Red carpet, white walls, the smell of lemon cleaning spray and old air. I found room 214 near the end of the corridor. I stood outside it for almost 2 minutes. Everything in me said, just walk away, just go back upstairs, call her, get breakfast, pretend you didn't see the card. But then I heard something. A voice inside the room, muffled, a man's laugh. And then unmistakably, Claire's laugh. That specific laugh, the one she does when she finds something genuinely funny, the one I used to live to hear. I stood completely still. The world shrank down to that door and that sound. I knocked. Silence, then shuffling, then more silence. I knocked again, said my name, said I knew she was in there. The door opened. Claire stood in the doorway in a hotel robe, hair undone, face pale as the wall behind her. Her eyes went wide when she saw me, not with guilt exactly, with something worse. Calculation. Like she was already figuring out what to say. Behind her, I could see the shape of a man sitting on the edge of the bed. He didn't look up, he just stared at the floor. I didn't go inside, I didn't need to. Everything I needed to know was already standing right in front of me. Here's what hit hardest, and this is something a lot of people in this situation don't talk about. It wasn't rage, not at first. It wasn't rage, not at first. It was clarity. 6 years of small doubts, half-answered questions, and silences that felt a little too long, they all collapsed into one single moment of perfect, awful understanding. She hadn't forgotten me. She had planned to be gone before I woke up. The keycard, she had it in her hand the night before. She must have set it down when she came back to grab something she'd forgotten. That's the thing about carefully planned exits, sometimes a small mistake gives everything away. But this is only the beginning of what I found. Because the man in that room, I recognized him. But if you think that's crazy, wait until you hear this. I knew him. Not well, but enough. His name was Marcus. He worked with Claire, same company, different department. I'd met him exactly twice, once at her work Christmas party 2 years ago and once when I picked her up from a work dinner. Both times Claire had introduced him as just a colleague. Both times he'd barely made eye contact with me. Now I understand why. Here's where the story gets more complicated, because it wasn't just about Marcus. When I finally talked to Claire, not in that doorway but later that morning in the hotel lobby in 2 stiff chairs near the window, she told me something I hadn't expected. She said this had been going on for 14 months. 14. Not weeks, not a few months. 14 months of lies, 14 months of cover stories, 14 months of a parallel life running quietly alongside ours. That number hit me like a physical thing. Think about everything that happens in 14 months. Holidays, birthdays, Sunday mornings, arguments, makeups, quiet evenings on the couch. All of it happening on top of a foundation that was already rotting. I'll explain what I mean by that in a moment, because there's a layer here that most people miss. The work trips were real trips. She did travel for work, but Marcus traveled with her. Same hotels, different rooms at first, then the same room. She had constructed something almost airtight. Almost. Here's the second wow moment, the solo trips to visit her sister in Manchester. Her sister confirmed to me later, crying on the phone, that Claire had only visited twice in the entire year, every other trip unaccounted for. Her sister had been covering for her. Not because she approved, but because Claire had told her they were having problems and needed space. That's the insider detail that most people on the outside of a situation like this never learn. The web of small lies almost always involves people close to you. Not strangers, not enemies. People who love you. People who got told just enough of the story to feel like they were helping. Claire's sister didn't know about Marcus. She thought she was giving her sister room to breathe. Instead, she was giving her room to disappear. Now let me tell you about the planning, because this is what separates a spontaneous mistake from something deliberate. The hotel that weekend, Marcus was already booked in room 214 when Claire suggested the trip to me. She hadn't planned a reconnection weekend. She had planned a goodbye. The thought was this: she'd come for the weekend with me, slip away in the morning, spend a few hours with Marcus, and be back before I noticed anything. Her plan had worked before. At least once, she admitted, a work conference where I'd been just one floor above her. Think about that, one floor above her. And I never knew. Here's the contrast that matters then versus now. Then, I was a husband who believed in his wife. A man who thought distance in a marriage was just a phase. A man who told his friends every couple goes through rough patches. Now, I was that same man sitting in a hotel lobby, realizing that the rough patch wasn't the problem. The rough patch was the cover story for the problem. Expert voices in relationship research, people who study betrayal and long-term deception, say one consistent thing: most people don't discover affairs through dramatic confrontation. They discover them through accidents. A left-behind phone, a receipt, a wrong door was left unlocked. A key card was left on a nightstand. The deception doesn't collapse because someone gets brave or gets caught. It collapses because of one small mistake in an otherwise careful plan. That's what happened here. And here's the thing Claire didn't count on: the small mistake didn't just reveal what was happening now, it gave me a thread to pull. And when I pulled it, this brings us to the most shocking discovery of all. I went home alone that day. 3-hour drive, Biscuit is waiting at the door. The apartment exactly as we'd left it, her coffee mug still in the drying rack, her jacket on the back of the chair. I didn't cry, not yet. I sat down at our kitchen table with my laptop, and I did something I never thought I'd do. I started looking. Not snooping through her things, nothing dramatic like that. I just started paying attention to what had always been in front of me. Her email was still logged in on our shared family computer. We'd set it up that way years ago, just convenience. I'd never looked at it before. I'm going to be honest, I hesitated for a long time before I opened it. But I did. And what I found inside wasn't just evidence of Marcus. It was evidence of a plan. Emails between Claire and a solicitor, a lawyer, dating back 11 months. They were discussing the process of separation, asset division, the apartment, the joint accounts. She had been quietly preparing to leave me for nearly a year. The affair wasn't a mistake that spiraled. The affair was part of a planned transition. She had been building her exit strategy while still sleeping next to me every night. Let that land for a second. Here's the biggest wow moment of the entire story. There was one email sent 4 months before that hotel weekend, where Claire wrote to the solicitor asking about timing. Specifically, she asked, is it better to initiate proceedings before or after a property valuation? She was asking about timing the divorce around the value of our apartment. This wasn't a woman in an emotional affair who didn't know what she wanted. This was a woman who had made her decision and was quietly executing it. The hotel weekend wasn't a last-ditch attempt to save the marriage. It was her final check-in, a courtesy, or maybe just a way to avoid a more difficult conversation at home. I don't know which, and honestly, after a while it stopped mattering. Because here's what reframes the entire story. I had been trying to fix a marriage that my wife had already decided to leave. Every date night I planned in those last months, every difficult conversation I initiated, every time I asked her, is everything okay? And she said, yes, I'm just tired. She already knew. She was just waiting for the timing to be right. That is the cruelest part of this kind of situation, and it's more common than most people know. Relationship researchers refer to this as silent departure planning, a period where one partner has mentally and emotionally checked out but hasn't yet left physically. They continue the routines. They say, "I love you," they show up for family dinners. But inside, the decision is made, the countdown has already started. The other partner feels something is wrong but can't name it. They try harder, they blame themselves, they ask more questions, plan more surprises, and work harder to close the distance. And the harder they try, the more invisible the gap becomes. Because the other person isn't pushing them away, they're just waiting. I had been living in someone else's countdown for 11 months without knowing it. And the keycard, that small white plastic card, was the only crack in a wall that had been built with enormous care. Now I understand the question at the front desk. She wasn't checking the hotel layout. She was confirming her exit route. She had planned to be gone before I woke up. No confrontation, no explanation, just an empty bed, her bags packed, and probably a text message from the road. The keycard ruined that plan. She forgot it. One card, one mistake, and the whole story fell open. So what does all this mean for us today? I want to be careful here. This isn't a story about how all relationships are lies. It isn't a guide to paranoia. And I'm not going to stand here and tell you to go check your partner's phone. But there are real lessons inside this story, and they matter, especially if you're in a long-term relationship right now. The first lesson is this: distance in a relationship isn't always what it looks like. Most of us, when we feel something is off with a partner, assume it's about stress, work, mental health, a rough season. Sometimes that's true. But sometimes, and this is the part people avoid saying, the distance isn't about what's happening around them. It's about a decision they've already made internally. The warning signs aren't dramatic, they're quiet, subtle, easy to explain away. A partner who becomes unusually private with their phone. A partner who stops bringing up the future, no more talking about holidays plans, one day we should. A partner who seems relieved after arguments resolve, not happy, relieved, like they dodged something they didn't want to deal with yet. A partner who starts handling finances separately. Individually, none of these things means anything definitive. Together, they tell a story. Here's the second lesson: trust your gut more than your loyalty. Loyalty is a beautiful thing, but it can also be weaponized by the people closest to you without them even fully realizing it. I stayed blind to the signs not because I was stupid. I stayed blind because I loved her, because I didn't want to be that paranoid husband, because questioning her felt like a betrayal of the trust we'd built. But here's the hard truth: by the time I had something concrete to investigate, the decision had already been made without me. The appropriate response to a gut feeling isn't to snoop, it's to have a direct conversation. Something feels off, I need to know if we're okay. That conversation done openly is not a weakness. It is the most courageous thing you can do in a relationship. I never had that conversation. I hoped the feeling would pass. It didn't pass, it just got buried deeper. Third lesson, and this one surprised me: the hardest part wasn't the betrayal. The hardest part was the 11 months before I knew. Because during those 11 months, I was working hard on something that wasn't broken in the way I thought it was broken. I was solving the wrong problem. That's a specific kind of pain. You can't name it when it's happening, but looking back, it's almost more disorienting than the moment of discovery. At least the discovery gave me solid ground to stand on. The 11 months before, I was standing in the fog. Here's a short-term consequence: when you discover this kind of planned exit, the immediate instinct is self-blame. To ask, what did I miss? What did I do wrong? Could I have fixed this? And the honest answer, based on everything I learned afterward, maybe, maybe not. But by the time the planning begins, the window for repair is already very narrow. Which is why early, honest communication matters more than most couples realize. Not dramatic conversations, not ultimatums. Just, I feel like we're drifting, can we talk about that? Long-term consequence: after something like this, trust is rebuilt slowly. if it rebuilds at all. But here's what I want target viewer, especially those of you in young relationships, to understand. What you do in the ordinary moments of a relationship is more protective than any dramatic gesture. Not the big anniversary trips, not the surprise gifts. The ordinary Tuesday where you put your phone down and actually look at the person sitting across from you. That's where connection lives or dies. Before we wrap up, there's one final thing you need to know. 3 months after that hotel morning, I got a message. Not from Claire, not from Marcus. From Claire's sister. She'd been carrying something since everything came out, something she needed to say. She told me that a week before the hotel trip, before I had any idea about any of this, Claire had called her. Long phone call, late at night. And on that call, Claire had cried. Not because she was happy, not because everything was perfect with Marcus, she cried because she was scared. She told her sister, "I don't know if I'm making the right choice." 1 week before she booked herself into room 214. 1 week before the planned exit, she had spent 11 months building toward. She wasn't sure. That's the final unexpected piece of this story, and it reframes everything in a complicated, very human way. Claire wasn't a villain in a movie, she wasn't someone who felt nothing. She was someone who got lost, who made a choice, then another choice to hide it, then kept making choices until the lies had their own weight and momentum, until stopping felt harder than continuing. That is how most betrayals actually work, not with cruelty, with weakness, with fear, with a series of small decisions that compound into something massive. Does that excuse it? No. Does it explain it? Partially. I'm not telling you this to make you feel sympathy for Claire. I'm telling you this because it changes the question. The question isn't, how could she do this? The real question is, how do people get to a place where a planned exit feels easier than a hard conversation? And the answer to that question is something every couple, every person should think about. Because the gap between "I'm unhappy" and "I've booked a lawyer" doesn't appear overnight. It grows slowly in silence. In all the moments when someone chose not to speak up because it felt easier to stay quiet. Think back to the beginning of this story. I woke up in an empty hotel room, cold sheets, a missing suitcase, a small white card on a nightstand. I almost put that card down. If I had, I might have waited by the phone all day. Claire might have sent that text from the road. The whole thing might have unraveled in a much slower, more controlled way, on her terms, on her timeline. Instead, one forgotten card brought me to a door, and that door opened everything. Sometimes the smallest thing is the one that matters most. If this opened your eyes, let me give you the 3 biggest takeaways from everything we just covered. 1. Betrayal in relationships rarely looks the way we imagine it. It isn't usually explosive or obvious. It's quiet, it's planned, it lives in plain sight inside the ordinary moments of a shared life. 2. The most dangerous period in a relationship isn't the argument or the confrontation, it's the silent countdown. The months when one person has already decided but the other person is still trying. If you feel something is off, say so, directly, openly, before the countdown reaches 0. 3. People who deceive the ones they love are not always cold or calculated. Often they're scared. They built something they couldn't get out of cleanly, so they kept building. Understanding this doesn't excuse the hurt, but it does help you stop asking the wrong question. Now here's what I want from you. If this story hit close to home, drop a comment below. You don't have to share everything. Even just, "I've been there," or "This happened to me too." You'd be surprised how many people are reading these same words right now, feeling less alone because of it. This channel exists for those stories, the real ones, the ones that don't have clean endings but still teach you something true. So if you aren't subscribed yet, hit that button right now, because we post stories like this every week. Stories about love, betrayal, real-life decisions, and the moments that change everything. And if this video made you think about someone in your life, a conversation you've been putting off, a feeling you've been ignoring, consider this your sign. Have the conversation, ask the question, Put the phone down and look at the person across from you. The things we leave unsaid have a way of making decisions for us. Here's my question for you today, and I genuinely want to read your answers in the comments. Have you ever had a gut feeling about a relationship that you ignored and later found out your gut was right? Tell me about it below. And while you're here, the next video is waiting for you right now. It's about another situation that looks completely normal from the outside and is hiding something much darker underneath. Same storytelling, same real-life truth. Trust me, you don't want to miss it.